The other big story everyone's talking about this hour, China. China upping the ante big time overnight. The communist country now raising tariffs again on the United States on our goods from 84% to 125%. President Trump already increased the tariffs on all China imports to 145%. And mind you, that includes the 20% previously in place for China's role in flooding our country with fentanyl. So right now, there is a 90-day pause on all reciprocal tariffs except those on China. Here is what the president said yesterday about the deals in the works. Listen.
Well, I think it's very close, but, you know, we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to. I could do this all in one day. I could just say, here's what we'll do.
All right, so new this morning. We know that U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, he has talks scheduled today with Israel, Vietnam, and Taiwan. We also have word talks are already underway with Argentina. So we are watching that closely. If there's anything new, we'll get that to you. In the meantime, let's take a look right now at the big board on this Friday morning. The Dow down 200. As you know, we've been watching your money all week long. It's been up, it's been down, some pretty historic highs. But yes, the fluctuations are continuing. This is expected. Let's bring in Jarrett Stepman right now. He's a columnist at the Daily Signal and author of The War on History. All right, so my first question, China, man, playing some major hardball here. Your thoughts on that? How long does it take for China before they break? And how do you think this is going to play out?
Yeah, it's interesting to see China escalate here. Just a few days ago, they were posting videos of Ronald Reagan now as Chairman Mao. I don't think this is good for China to be acting so openly and aggressively with the Trump administration. I think it shows that they are concerned about the moves that the Trump administration has taken. I think they would prefer a lot of these deals. A lot of this continues to go on sort of behind the scenes. A lot of their economic influence around the globe happen quietly, that their influence grows quietly while the U.S. sort of does nothing. But this does show to me that there is some concern in Beijing that Trump's tariffs are going to potentially isolate them from the global economy, that new deals will be made with a lot of U.S. allies, that it will further isolate the Chinese economy from the U.S. And so I do see this as part of a long-term negotiation where Trump is thinking I would say in a strategic way about the role that China has played in the world. And it's one that I think Americans and people across the globe have become quite concerned with.
And we've gotten some new information, and while we're watching this play out with China, you have to wonder, is there ego at play here on China's part? But this just into the newsroom, consumer sentiment down 11% to 50.8 in March, falling to the lowest level in 3 years. The University of Michigan's long-running survey, they say, is the closest thing to a real-time indicator of how people are responding to this trade policy. Your reaction to this report, do you feel as though most Americans are watching this and understanding, or do you feel as though the administration does need to be very careful with the consumer support surrounding these trade deals and this trade war?
They certainly do. And I think the messaging on this is very important. Of course, Americans in part elected Donald Trump because they thought he would improve America's economic circumstances. Certainly his first term, I think, was very successful for the United States on that front. I think Trump sort of started this trade war in part because it's early on in his presidency. He knew that there would be some lumps. And really, they do have to explain there's going to be some pain in the decoupling from China. I think that's just reality. I think if Trump and his surrogates are straight about that, I think it will lessen the blow of what will be, I think, for a while, uneven economic news. I think that's just reality. The decoupling is going to be difficult with China. I think they need to explain that the long-term effect is going to be good for Americans. It's going to be good for Americans of all backgrounds successfully in the future, that we can no longer be so dependent on the Chinese Communist Party and China itself.
And, you know, it's interesting. We just saw yesterday the House passed its version of what President Trump is calling the big, beautiful bill. He says that is going to kind of be a stopgap and add so many things in addition to this trade war, and it's all going to work succinctly together. So it's going to be interesting to see once they get to the president's desk, if it does get there, how that offsets and then adds to the economy like he's been promising. I want to switch gears here just a bit, Jarrett. The Supreme Court ruling last night to uphold a lower court order. Actually, part of it was to uphold a court order. That's up for debate this morning. I want to break this down. It's not been accurately reported in other media. So first, the ruling states that the lower court judges do not have authority to interfere with the president's power in foreign relations. That's a huge part of this. Now, the order also requires the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is the Maryland man. A judge previously ruled he has ties to MS-13. He was supposed to be deported to a country other than El Salvador, but he was ruled to be deported. The administration acknowledges a clerical error is what sent him to El Salvador instead of another country other than the United States. So let's look at the judge ruling. What does the word facilitate mean? How does that change things? Because some legal analysts this morning are saying it's not an outright order to return this alleged gang person back to the United States. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that was a very shrewd move by the Supreme Court, actually limiting the court authority in this case and not interfering with the president's, the executive's Article 2 powers. I think that's some of the danger we've seen from some of these lower courts who have expanded the judiciary's role into foreign policy. And what that means is ultimately they can't force the president of the United States to force another country to act in the situation. So this saga isn't really over. This really depends on what El Salvador as a sovereign country chooses to do. So there's still going to be a negotiation involved with bringing this man back. I think that's very important that the Supreme Court especially, uses this time to basically boost the reputation of the courts itself, so they are not stepping beyond the limits, their constitutional limits. So I do think it's actually sort of it's a loss and a win for the administration, because while they don't like the decision necessarily, it still preserves that Article 2 power. It doesn't allow the judiciary to involve itself in potentially future affairs of the president and dealing with other countries.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see what that word facilitate means, because it doesn't mean you have to bring them back. It means you have to facilitate a conversation. And we know the president of El Salvador is going to be here in the United States speaking with President Trump. They have a good relationship, so it'll be interesting to see what ultimately happens. Where does this illegal person end up, and what country does he end up being in? Jarrett Stepman, good to see you. Thank you for your input and insight this morning.
Thank you very much.